The foundation of the Mafia is not built on fear alone, but on an unbreakable code of trust, a sacred wall of silence they call Omertà. To breach that wall was considered impossible. To do so from the inside was a death sentence waiting to be inked in blood. It was into this hermetic, paranoid world that a man named Donnie Brasco, a purported jewel thief from Florida, casually strolled in 1976. His entry point was a small, unassuming social club in Brooklyn, a haunt for mid-level wise guys of the Bonanno crime family, one of the 5 potent empires that ruled New York's underworld. Brasco was cool, he was capable, and he understood the rules. He didn't ask too many questions, he paid his respects, and he demonstrated a crucial skill: he was an excellent earner. This facade, however, was the most meticulously constructed weapon in FBI history. Donnie Brasco was Special Agent Joseph D. Pistone, a man whose nerves were forged of steel and whose acting ability would put Hollywood's finest to shame. His mission, dubbed Operation Sun Apple, was breathtakingly simple and lethally dangerous: infiltrate the Mafia, climb its ranks, and dismantle it from within. For 6 long years, Pistone didn't just play a role, he became Donnie Brasco. He lived, breathed, and operated within the suffocating confines of mob life. He witnessed beatings, orchestrated thefts, and navigated a labyrinth of loyalties where a single misplaced word or a fleeting glance could trigger execution. He learned the slang, the handshakes, the rituals. He endured the long, empty hours in social clubs, the boasting, the petty grievances, the constant, low-grade paranoia that was the background hum of every gangster's life. His first major break came not from a high-ranking boss, but from a soldier named Benjamin Lefty Guns Ruggiero, a volatile, aging hitman who saw in Brasco a protege, a potential source of income, and perhaps even a surrogate son. Lefty, perpetually strapped for cash and respect, vouched for Brasco, bringing him into the orbit of the crew's captain, the man who would become the central, tragic figure of this entire saga, Dominick Sonny Black Napolitano. Sonny Black was no street thug, he was a respected, old-school gangster. Calm where Lefty was hot-headed, strategic where others were impulsive, he carried himself with an air of quiet authority. He had earned his stripes, his button, through proven loyalty and shrewdness. To the Bonanno family, still reeling from the chaotic and very public assassination of their brutal boss, Carmine Lilo Galante, stability and reliable earners were paramount. Sonny Black, overseeing his crew from his headquarters at the Motion Lounge in Brooklyn's Williamsburg, represented that stability. And when Lefty presented Donnie Brasco, Sonny Black was initially cautious, as any good captain would be. But over months, then years, Brasco proved his worth. He brought in scores from hijacked trucks and jewelry heists. He was always respectful, always generous with his kick-ups. He never complained, never pushed for his button too overtly. He was, in every observable way, the perfect mob associate. Sonny Black's trust in him grew organically, cemented by shared time and tangible profit. He allowed Brasco to sit in on sensitive meetings. He discussed family politics with him. He even used him as a messenger to other factions. In the cloistered world of the Bonannos, Donnie Brasco was no longer just an associate. He was becoming a confidant, a trusted member of Sonny Black's inner circle. The wall of Omertà, impossibly, had been scaled. The FBI had its man on the inside, and the intelligence flowing back to Washington was unprecedented. Detailed charts of the family's hierarchy, their methods of operation, their hidden rackets, and most damningly, their direct involvement in murders. Pistone was living a double life of unimaginable stress, knowing his wife and children were in hiding, knowing that discovery meant a torturous death. Yet, the deeper he went, the more the line between Joseph Pistone and Donnie Brasco blurred, a psychological tightrope walk over an abyss. Meanwhile, Sonny Black, believing he had secured a loyal and valuable asset for the family, was unknowingly weaving the very rope that would hang not only him but the entire upper echelon of the Bonanno dynasty. The stage was set for a betrayal so profound it would rip the heart out of La Cosa Nostra's code and leave a trail of bodies and life sentences in its wake. The Bonanno family into which Sonny Black welcomed Brasco was a dynasty in crisis. A snake pit of ambition and treachery that made the undercover agent's position both perilously exposed and incredibly valuable. The family was still convulsing from the power vacuum created by the spectacular hit on Carmine Galante, the mustachioed, cigar-chomping godfather who had been gunned down in a hail of bullets while eating lunch on a Bushwick restaurant patio in 1979. Galante's murder, sanctioned by the Commission for his overreach, unleashed a bloody civil war for succession. Sonny Black found himself navigating this minefield, loyal to the family's traditional leadership but acutely aware of the shifting allegiances. It was during this period of internal turmoil that Donnie Brasco's value to Sonny Black, and by extension to the FBI, skyrocketed. Sonny began entrusting Brasco with far more than stolen goods. He involved him in the family's most sensitive business, murder. In chilling conversations, Sonny Black and Lefty Ruggiero discussed the planned hits of 3 rebellious Bonanno captains who were challenging the acting boss, Philip Rusty Rastelli, from prison. Brasco was not just a passive listener. He was tasked with crucial reconnaissance, scouting locations for the murders, and even being proposed as a potential getaway driver. Every detail of these plots, the targets, the motivations, the chosen methods, was meticulously reported by Pistone to his FBI handlers. The trust was now absolute and fatal. Sonny Black saw Brasco as a future-made man, even promising to sponsor him for his button once the family's internal strife settled. He gave Brasco responsibility over other associates and allowed him to handle significant sums of money. In a world where suspicion was second nature, Sonny had effectively lowered all his defenses. Meanwhile, Pistone, as Brasco, was walking an ever-narrowing ledge. The pressure was immense. He had to constantly justify his fake life, his fictitious sources of income, to increasingly curious mobsters. He witnessed acts of brutal violence that he was powerless to stop without blowing his cover. The psychological toll was catastrophic, forcing him to compartmentalize his humanity to survive. The danger reached a fever pitch when the Bonanno leadership, now under the control of Rastelli's faction, decided to formally make Brasco a member. This was the ultimate goal of the operation, but also its most dangerous moment. The induction ceremony, or making ceremony, was the Mafia's most sacred and secret ritual. An FBI agent participating in it would yield intelligence of historic value. However, it also meant taking a sacred oath of loyalty, pricking his finger to shed blood on a saint's card, and swearing allegiance to the family until death. For Pistone, it was an untenable line to cross, both legally and ethically. The FBI, fearing for his safety and the legal complications, made the agonizing decision to pull him out. After 6 years, Donnie Brasco simply vanished. He told Sonny Black and Lefty he had to return to Florida to handle a pressing family matter, a fictional wife in a car accident. The mobsters, accustomed to the unpredictable rhythms of the criminal life, accepted it, albeit reluctantly. They expected their trusted earner to return. But Brasco was gone for good. Back in the safety of federal protection, Joseph Pistone began the monumental task of decompressing from his alter ego and translating 6 years of lived experience into courtroom testimony. The net was closing, but for Sonny Black, Lefty Ruggiero, and the entire Bonanno hierarchy, the true nature of the catastrophe that was about to befall them was still a hidden, gathering storm. The storm broke in the summer of 1981. The FBI, armed with Pistone's mountain of evidence, began making arrests, flipping lower-level soldiers, and preparing indictments that would decapitate the Bonanno family. But for the men who had called Donnie Brasco a friend, the first, chilling whisper of betrayal did not come from a federal agent serving a warrant. It came through the Mafia's own, dreaded grapevine. As rumors swirled of a massive investigation, of secret recordings and an unprecedented mole, the terrible truth began to crystallize for Sonny Black. The pieces fit together with horrific clarity. Brasco's convenient departure, his uncanny ability to avoid legal trouble, his perfectly timed disappearances during certain operations. The realization must have been a physical blow, a cold void opening in the pit of his stomach. He had not just been fooled, he had been the primary instrument of his family's destruction. He had personally vouched for, sponsored, and elevated an FBI agent, introducing a federal virus directly into the Bonanno bloodstream. In the eyes of the Mafia's law, this was not a simple error in judgment. It was the ultimate, unforgivable sin. His fate was sealed not by a judge, but by the Commission, the ruling council of the 5 families. A contract was issued. Sonny Black, a respected captain, was now a dead man walking. Yet, in what would become the final, defining act of his life, Sonny Black displayed a stark, brutal honor. He did not run. He did not beg for his life or try to cut a deal with the government, though he certainly had enough information to bargain. Understanding the irreversible nature of his transgression, he chose to face the consequences of the world he had sworn to live and die in. He reportedly cleaned his affairs, knowing the end was near. On August 17, 1981, he was summoned to a meeting in the home of a soldier in Staten Island. He went willingly, knowing full well what awaited him. He was greeted not with accusations, but with a chilling normalcy, a conversation, a drink. Then, the violence erupted. He was shot in the head, his hands were severed, a symbolic punishment for having shaken the hand of an FBI agent and for having signed his own death warrant by vouching for him. His body was stuffed into a body bag, driven to a secluded area in upstate New York, and buried in a shallow grave. It would not be discovered for over a year. Sonny Black's execution was a message written in blood. The code, however shattered by Brasco, still had the power to demand its ghoulish tribute. But his death was just the opening act of the retribution. The fallout was swift, brutal, and far-reaching. Lefty Ruggiero, the man who had first brought the snake into the garden, was a marked man from the start. Desperate, paranoid, and abandoned, he was lured to a meeting in a Brooklyn social club in November 1981 and was never seen again, his body likely disposed of in the Mafia's anonymous tradition. The three rebel captains whose murders Sonny Black had discussed with Brasco, Alphonse Sonny Red Indelicotto, Philip Philly Lucky Giacone, and Dominic Big Trin Trinchera, were already dead, ambushed in a legendary massacre at a social club in 1981, a hit that Pistone had forewarned the FBI about but which they could not prevent without compromising him. The gun used in one of those killings was later found in Sonny Black's ceiling, a grim piece of evidence linking the threads of the drama. As the physical cleanup proceeded on the streets, the legal tsunami hit the courtrooms. Joseph Pistone emerged from the shadows, and his testimony became the cornerstone of over 200 indictments and more than 100 convictions. His evidence was unassailable because it came not from a wiretap or a snitch, but from a participant. He could describe the texture of the wallpaper in mob sit-downs, the specific brand of whiskey drunk, the subtle inflections in a threat. The Bonanno family was gutted. High-ranking members, including acting boss Philip Rastelli, were convicted and sentenced to decades in prison based largely on Pistone's word. The myth of Mafia invincibility and impenetrability was shattered forever. The Pistone operation proved that with enough patience, skill, and sheer nerve, the FBI could not just investigate organized crime, but could inhabit it, becoming a ghost in its machine. The cost, however, was measured in more than convictions. It was measured in the psychological destruction of Joseph Pistone, who would live under threat and in hiding for the rest of his life. It was measured in the bloody, honorable exit of Sonny Black, a man who lived by a code and was ultimately destroyed by his adherence to its final, fatal demand. And it was measured in the complete erosion of trust within La Cosa Nostra, a paranoia so profound that for years afterward, old associates were viewed with unspeakable suspicion, wondering if the man sharing a drink with them was also wearing a wire, living a lie, waiting for the moment to testify. The family never truly recovered. The legacy of Donnie Brasco and the downfall of Sonny Black extends far beyond the court transcripts and the grave in upstate New York. It represents a permanent seismic shift in the war against organized crime, a masterclass in psychological infiltration whose aftershocks are still felt in the hushed, paranoid remnants of the American Mafia today. Operation Sun Apple did not merely result in arrests, it weaponized the mob's own culture against it, exploiting its values of loyalty and earning to engineer its collapse. The subsequent Hollywood film, Donnie Brasco, while compressing events and characters, captured the essential, tragic heart of the story. The genuine, fraught bond that formed between the undercover agent and the gangsters he was destined to destroy. Johnny Depp's Pistone and Al Pacino's Lefty portrayed a twisted father-son dynamic that mirrored reality, where affection and betrayal became inseparable. But the real, untold story lies in the quiet devastation left in the operation's wake. For Joseph Pistone, victory was Pyrrhic. He retired from the FBI and entered a life of perpetual vigilance, a ghost in the witness protection program, forever looking over his shoulder for a threat that may never fully dissipate. The man who spent 6 years pretending to be someone else faced a lifelong challenge of remembering who he truly was, his family bearing the hidden cost of his service. For the Bonanno family, the damage was apocalyptic. They were expelled from the Commission, the ruling council of the 5 families, an unprecedented humiliation that relegated them to second-tier status for decades. The very word Brasco became a curse, a synonym for the ultimate gullibility, a stain on the family name that took generations to fade. Trust, the currency of their hidden world, was devalued to zero. New inductees were vetted with obsessive, counterproductive scrutiny, stalling business and breeding resentment. The old-school captains like Sonny Black, who operated on instinct and a handshake, were replaced by more cautious, and often less effective, leaders. The operation provided the blueprint for a new era of federal prosecution, moving from reliance on electronic surveillance to long-term, deep-cover human intelligence. It demonstrated that the way to dismantle a secret society was not just to listen to its conversations, but to live its life, to earn its rituals, and to turn its sacred oaths into evidence. This legacy is seen in every subsequent major undercover operation against criminal enterprises, from motorcycle gangs to drug cartels. The ghost of Donnie Brasco walks every time an agent assumes a false identity, understanding that the greatest intelligence comes not from observing the monster, but from walking beside it, sharing its fears and its ambitions, all while meticulously charting its anatomy for dissection. Yet, within this cold calculus of law enforcement, the human tragedy of Dominick Napolitano endures. Sonny Black was not innocent. He was a killer, an extortionist, a captain in a brutal criminal organization. But his final act was one of stark, tragic integrity within the corrupted world he chose. He accepted the judgment of his peers, knowing it was his own trust that had doomed them. In that acceptance, he upheld the very code that his actions had inadvertently helped to shatter. He became a dark legend, a cautionary tale of loyalty's double edge, spoken of in whispers by those who still walk the old neighborhoods. His story, and the story of Operation Sunapple, forces an uncomfortable moral reckoning. It asks where the line is between deception and betrayal, between duty and friendship, and what price is paid for victory when the weapon is a man's conscience and the collateral damage includes the souls of all involved. The chairs of the Bonanno family were indeed emptied, as the title promised, but the courtroom chairs filled with convicted men, and the empty chair at the Motion Lounge spoke louder than any verdict. It whispered of a world that was gone, a code that was broken, and a trust that, once given to the wrong man, could never be reclaimed, only paid for in blood and silence, forever altering the landscape of American crime and the lives of every man, on both sides of the law, who was caught in its devastating crossfire. This narrative has been constructed from historical records, court testimonies, declassified FBI files, and published accounts, including Joseph Pistone's own memoir. The purpose is to present the documented facts of this pivotal case in an engaging, accessible format. The events described involved real people and real consequences. Our aim is solely to inform and illuminate this complex chapter in criminal justice history. If this deep dive into the shadowy, real-world events that changed the Mafia forever held your attention, then your engagement is crucial for this channel. Please show your support. Like this video to increase